And tonight's video is going to be a little bit different. Um, Tonight, I'm going to talk about, are we on the brink of another 9/11? Are we on the brink of having a major terrorist attack in the United States because of the war that's going on between the United States, Israel, and Iran? So, I want to talk tonight a little bit about sleeper cells that have possibly been activated in the United States. And I want to give you some practical advice on what you can and cannot do about that. Now, the reason I'm familiar with this is because I worked 26 years for the United States federal government. I was a federal law enforcement officer working as a security police officer at a nuclear weapons facility, one of the most sensitive places in the entire Western world. And we specialized in counterterrorism, is what we did. We were like military police. We were police officers for the plant, but we also were counter-terrorists in that we trained in counter-terrorist tactics. And for the last 10 years of my career, I was a SRT with Special Emergency Response Team. And the last 4 years of that 10 years, I was on the Op 4 team, the opposing forces team, where we trained in the tactics of terrorists. And we traveled around the United States and we attacked other DOE nuclear facilities to test them for their weaknesses. So that's where I get my experience from. And I used to receive a lot of classified briefings every day, or not every day, but we got a lot of classified briefings on different types of terrorist attacks and things that happened. And I'm not going to reveal anything classified that I still know from those days, but I am going to give you some general information about this subject and tell you some things that might help keep you safe in case you are present when a terrorist attack occurs, in case you're there when something goes down. I'm going to show you how to avoid that stuff. Then I'm going to show you, in case you do get caught up in it, what you should and should not do. There are things you should do, and there are things you should not do if you're in the midst of a terrorist attack. So, first of all, let's take a look at the threat. Okay. I've got a news article here, and everybody's been talking about it on the news today. A lot of people have been talking about it online. They're talking about here in Newsmax. Here it says Iranian sleeper cells, U.S. intelligence officials have intercepted encrypted communications believed to have originated in Iran that could serve as an operational trigger for sleeper cells operating abroad, according to a federal alert issued to law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement agencies all over the United States have been alerted to the potential of terrorist attacks by sleeper cells here inside the United States. That trigger alert they're talking about is I don't way back in the 70s when I was young, I used to have a shortwave radio, and I would hook up a wire to it and attach it to our fence so I could listen to broadcasts from all over the world. And occasionally I would run into what they call a numbers station, a number station. And I didn't even know what this was at the time until later on. I found out a numbers station is a station that basically broadcasts encoded information to terrorist groups or insurgent groups around the world. They use shortwave radio because it travels all over the world, and they read off a series of numbers. And if you have a key, an encryption key, you can plug that in, so to speak, into those numbers, and you get a message out of it. It gives you like who it's to, what it's for, what they want you to do, like instructions. Okay, so this type of numbers program, for the first time in Iran's history, came on a few nights ago and started broadcasting these what seemed to be random numbers. But what this was a numbers broadcast activating sleeper cells. They were putting out information that was encoded into these numbers that basically gave instructions on what people should do. So U.S. intelligence intercepts Iranian message that may activate sleeper cells. So that is the generalization of the threat. Now let's take a look at something more specific. Okay, I took a lot of series of notes here because I didn't want to forget. There's a lot of information here, so I remembered my training and went over all the news stuff and started putting this together. Okay, U.S. intelligence services have informed law enforcement agencies nationwide that Iran has sent what is believed to be encrypted messages over a shortwave radio trigger orders for sleeper cells inside the United States. U.S. intelligence has intercepted communications that appear to indicate that there could also be a drone attack from offshore ships against coastal targets in the United States. These ships are disguised as civilian vessels like container ships or fishing boats. So, what they basically have done, and there was a version of this that was done by Ukraine. Ukraine took a bunch of these shipping crates and shipped them across the border under civilian pretenses into Russia, and they had them delivered near Russian air bases. And at a predetermined signal, these things were had batteries in there, and the roof opened up, and all these pre-programmed drones were attached to these railings, and they just started shooting out of the top of this container and flying over to their predetermined targets and started exploding at a Russian airbase. So this was a sneak attack done by the Ukrainians against the Russians. So that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid that Iran is taking a page out of that book. They've learned some tactics from the Chinese and doing this kind of thing. And they probably have a container ship or maybe a fishing trawler that has been converted to covertly be an Iranian drone launching platform so that they could launch drones. They could sit 12 miles off the coast outside of U.S. territorial waters, sit in international waters, and they could fire these things. And they have a much longer range than 12 miles. So they could go inland and hit targets. Okay. So there may come a time when this happens. Now, we'll talk about other sleeper cells. This is not a sleeper cell, so to speak. It's like a sleeper ship, with terrorists on board. Now, they probably pre-positioned these ships long before the war ever started between the United States and Iran. They knew it was coming. And I'll tell you about some things the United States government probably did in preparation for this, in knowing that this was coming. So, in any case, they got prepared and we got prepared. And so this may be something that they have done. Okay. So they may have these ships out there. They're going to launch these drones. Um, Coastal targets for drone attacks could indicate, could include crowded spring break events. Spring break is starting up this month, starting up here this next weekend. Schools, universities, military bases, oil refineries, sporting events, festivals, parades, airports, or even high rise buildings. Lots of different types of targets these drones might go after. Some of them may have military significance, and many of them may just be to cause civilian casualties. There's been a lot of debate about a missile that fell on an Iranian school and killed 160 schoolgirls. So don't be surprised if some of these drones are programmed to go after schools here in the United States. Now, I don't know if this is East Coast, West Coast, Gulf of Mexico, all three. I have no idea. Maybe off the coast of Florida and the Caribbean. Don't know. You just need to be alert. If you're in a coastal area, be on the alert. Watch for drones. Usually you can hear them. If you've watched videos online, you can hear these things coming in. Okay. If they're coming in, take cover. That's about all you can do with a drone attack is take cover. Get out of its way. If you think it's coming towards you, make a 90-degree turn, go a different direction, get out of its way, evade it, and get out of its way. Okay. All right. There have been incidents of individual lone wolf attacks in Austin, Texas, and New York City that are not sleeper cell attacks. Lone wolf attacks are very difficult to pick up because it's just one or two people, and they generally don't advertise what they're doing. There's not a group to follow around. They don't draw as much attention, but they're also sometimes not as effective. It depends on what they do. Most of your lone wolf attacks involve like somebody driving a vehicle through a crowd of people, like what happened in New Orleans on New Year's Eve in 2025. Uh, right there at 2024, 25, when it changed over on January 1st, right after midnight, a guy took a truck drove it at a high rate of speed down the street through the French Quarter and killed 14 people and wounded about 20 something others. That was a lone wolf attack. Those are very difficult to stop. Okay. These two guys, these two idiots that came from Pennsylvania and New York City, went to that went to that crusade, that march that Jake Lang was leading, and they were too stupid, obviously, to make a bomb that worked. Fortunately, they're too dumb to make a bomb, and they lit fuses on these homemade hand grenades and they threw them at the marchers and they did not explode. Both of them got arrested and they both have been since shown to be connected to ISIS. So that happened. Austin, Texas, a lone gunman pulls out a handgun. What he did was he cased around the bar in the 6th Street Bar District, which is very crowded on a Saturday night. He went out there just before the bars closed at 2 a.m. and he started driving around, casing, I guess, looking for the largest crowds. Then he pulled up and stopped in front of this bar, started shooting out the window with a handgun. Then he exited the vehicle with a rifle and started shooting. And fortunately, the police responded in 57 seconds and shot this guy and killed him. And he was sympathetic to the Iranians because he was wearing a shirt about he supported Iran underneath his sweatshirt. His sweatshirt said "Property of Allah," and he had an Iranian flag inside of his car and a Quran. He was a terrorist, a Muslim terrorist who sympathized with Iran, was influenced by their calls for them to attack people, and he went out and did this on his own. Now, those are lone wolf attacks. He killed 3 people and wounded about 14 others. He did all that in less than a minute. Okay. Now, the sleeper cell attacks are going to be a lot more sophisticated. Okay. Sleeper cell attacks will probably be groups of highly trained individuals conducting coordinated attacks that will be high casualty and could be multi-pronged. Yeah, and there's a story that I wanted to recall to you guys about a Revolutionary Guard group of guys. About 30 of them got caught off the coast of Texas. So when I was working at Pantex and we were on strike in 2007, myself and another young man, a young officer, were sitting across the street with on a picket line, holding our little picket signs, sitting in a chair, and this guy that's sitting next to me, I'm not going to give his name, he got a phone call from a guy that we knew very well, and I'm not going to give his name. He had recently quit Pantex because it was too boring, and he went to work for the Coast Guard. And he called up him and said, "Hey," and so he says, "Hey, David's with me." So he started talking to us on speakerphone, and he said, "Guess we just did a raid where I rappelled onto a boat, a ship in the Gulf of Mexico, headed for Texas. Guess what we found on that boat?" And we were like, "Drugs." That was our first response. Big bunch of drugs. He says, "Nope, 30 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps members." And this was in 2007. These were the ones that were caught. Folks, they've been here for a long time. And a sleeper cell is a cell that acts normal. They live normal lives. They have jobs. They're your next door neighbor. They go to your barbecues. You have different activities. They go to soccer games with their kids, all this stuff. And then when they get activated, they turn into terrorists. Meanwhile, in the background, they're training, they're learning. They're learning how to build bombs. They're gathering material. So in case they ever have to make a bomb, or they gather guns, ammunition, they stockpile things, they get ready in case they're called up, and they prepare themselves for that. And then one day when they get the call, they activate and they get together. Usually it's more than one. A sleeper cell is usually at least two. Sometimes it could be half a dozen or more, but each cell is independent. They don't know about the other cells. So if they ever get caught, that cell can get taken down, but they cannot give up any information about other cells. So these cells are independent. That's how they operate. They don't know about the other cells. So they get activated and then they go out and they attack. And usually they have a primary target, a secondary target, and then a third target. If they can get away with attacking the primary target and not get killed or captured, then they attack the secondary and then they go on to the third. And if they're still active, they just do whatever. but they can be very destructive. They're usually more professionally trained. They train with their weapons. They practice with the bombs. They build their bombs. They explode them out in remote areas so they can test them. They know what they're doing, and this is usually coordinated, and sometimes it's multi-pronged. And we'll get into that a little bit more as I get into the do's and don'ts. Okay. All right. Now, the sleeper cell attack targets can be very wide and varied also. Targets could be schools, malls, churches, synagogues, military bases, or bars and nightclubs frequented by military personnel. That is also a target. If they know that there's a certain bar that a lot of cops go hang out at, or they know there's a certain bar where a lot of military personnel hang out at, that can become a target. Okay. Police stations, universities, sporting events, oil refineries, or storage areas. These are very important targets because right now Iran is attacking oil facilities all over the Middle East because they're trying to drive the price of oil up. They're shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. They're attacking oil facilities. They're trying to drive the price of oil up to hurt the United States economically. So these drone attacks, imagine if you had a drone ship in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico and it fired at some oil refineries in Houston and blew up some oil storage tanks and just basically burned a huge fire and shut the whole plant down for weeks or months. You could drive the price of oil up. You can go at the supply line. You can go after pipelines. There might be an attack on the Alaska pipeline. That's not out of the question. I've actually walked up to the Alaska pipeline when I lived in Alaska. My wife and I did. We stood right underneath it. We could have put a bomb on that thing easily. That thing is so long and it's in such remote areas that anybody with an ATV and a bomb could go out there and put multiple bombs along the way and blow that thing up, and it would take a long time to repair it, enough to drive the price of oil up. So that could happen. In any case, these are oil refineries and oil facilities, pipelines, storage tanks, strategic oil reserve, anything like that could be a target for either sleeper cell ground attacks, drone attacks. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, oil refineries or storage areas, nightclubs. We saw that in with the lone wolf attack in Austin. So nightclubs are definitely targets. Muslims don't like alcohol. They don't like nudity. So your nudie bar could be on the list. Okay, don't go to nudie bars. Concerts, festivals, spring break events, pro-Israel demonstrations, rallies. If there's a pro-Israel demonstration or rally, they could definitely put that on their target list. Restaurants or anywhere there's a large crowd. Anytime there's a large crowd, that is an opportunity for them to carry out an attack. Now, how do they carry out the attacks? Well, there's a variety of techniques they can use. Attacks could be mass shooters, car bombs, small explosive drones, like even not just from the ship, they could be launched out of through the sunroof of an SUV or out of the back of a pickup. They can launch small drones with bombs or grenades attached. They drop them off. They could fly over a crowded area, just like you've seen the Ukrainians do to the Russians, attach a bomb underneath a drone and use it like a bomber. Then fly over a crowd of people and drop that little bomb and explode and kill a bunch of people. Now, if you did a drone swarm like that and sent a dozen or 2 dozen drones, you'd kill a lot of people. They could fly these drones over an airport, land them on a wing, a suicide drone, crash into the wing of an airplane about to take off and explode and blow up an airplane with a bunch of people sitting on the ground. They don't even have to be up in the air, could be on the ground. So airports are a target. Okay. Small explosive drones, fire bombings, Molotov cocktails, things like that. Arson, they could set wildfires, that which many of these wildfires in California, a lot of people think some of those are terrorist attacks, and they've just been keeping quiet about that. Kidnappings, hostage taking, suicide bombings, vehicles plowing through crowds. This is a very common technique that they've used over in Europe to great success. At France on Bastille Day several years ago, a Muslim guy, drove a small truck through a crowd of people and splattered a bunch of people. And then he jumped out with a rifle and was going to start shooting people, and the police killed him. Fortunately, stabbings. These attacks may be now this. I want you to listen very carefully to this next part. These attacks may be preceded by or in accordance with coordinated cyber attacks to cause confusion and slow down emergency response. Examples: taking down the 911 system and or cell services just prior to the attack. That's a very important component, and that could be a precursor to you later on, that if you are someplace and suddenly the cell phones all go down, you can't get a cell service. Suddenly, it's not just your carrier, it's everybody's carriers in that whole area, that they maybe have attacked a substation or something that controls the internet traffic or controls cell phone traffic, and they've taken that offline with a small explosive device or set fire to it or something, and they've sabotaged that to make everybody's phones not work so that you can't call 911. Or they destroy the 911 call center, attack it, blow it up, use that as a distraction, and at the same time inhibit the 911 calls while they attack other places. These people are devious. Okay, they're devious. All right, I'll tell you a little story that I learned. One of the things I learned one of our briefings and stuff. This is not classified. This is actually open source. So some years ago in the Middle East, there was a bombing attack, and I can't remember where it was from. It might have been in Lebanon. It might have been. I'm not 100% sure. In any case, in Lebanon, they had this terrorist attack. A car bomb exploded and killed a bunch of people. So all these emergency vehicles respond, right? And all these emergency personnel come up and try to start digging through the rubble and helping everybody. And after hundreds of people arrived, guess what happened? An ambulance just exploded. Boom! Because the terrorists had planned a second attack on the responding personnel, the emergency response personnel. This did two things. Number one is it got a bigger kill ratio for them. And number two, it inhibited their response because a lot of their personnel that are trained to handle this got killed or wounded, and they became part of the victims of the attack. You see what I'm saying? This is how these people think. We have to learn to understand how they think in order to avoid in situations, and I'm going to explain, I'm going to put this into context for you in your own personal behavior if you're someplace when an attack occurs. I'm not telling you these stories for no reason. Okay. They're pertinent to what I'm going to tell you here in a minute. Okay. All right. They might involve multiple methods in multiple locations, either simultaneously or in a series, like the Paris attacks. You know, when they blew up some people at like outside of a soccer stadium, and then somebody else went and machine gunned some cafes. Okay, so it could be multiple attacks in multiple areas, either simultaneously or one in quick succession after another. This is to do two things. Is number one is create maximum chaos, maximum fear, and also to spread the emergency response out and thin them out so that they are not very effective in doing their job. And maybe they'll do a third attack that they can get away with even more. So you gotta be you always have to be on the alert that if you are someplace and a terrorist attack occurs near you or where you're at, the first event you witness or hear might not be the last. Okay. That might just be the opening round, so to speak. So you got to keep that in mind in your response, what we're going to talk about here in a minute. Okay. US intelligence and the FBI are on this, but they don't know everything. ICE raids, now this is my personal assessment. Okay. I don't have any evidence of this, I don't have any classified information about it or anything like that. This is my personal assessment, knowing how the intelligence agencies and the government work, because I worked in the government. Okay. ICE raids may have been a cover for rounding up suspected sleeper cells because they knew the Iran war was coming. So these ICE raids that you've been seeing all over the country, where they're arresting criminals, like rapists, murderers, drug dealers, human traffickers, that kind of thing, that are here illegally, that may have been what they did publicly on the surface. But underneath the surface, privately, what they may have been doing is also rounding up suspected Iranian sleeper cells. They may have been just grabbing these people and interrogating them or deporting them or whatever to reduce the threat level, because they knew we were going to go to war with Iran. Believe me, the government knew we were going to go to war to Iran long before those ships ever even started gathering over in the Gulf. Okay. Before the first ship arrived, they knew what they were going to do. They knew what, they might have wanted to help handle things diplomatically. That might have been a, contingency. We're hoping this works out diplomatically, but if it doesn't, here's our plan. And grabbing these sleeper cells in advance would have been one of the things that they might have made a contingency plan for. Okay. All right. So here's what do you do? What do you do? Okay. If you are in an area in which there is a terrorist attack, there are certain behaviors that can keep you safe, and certain behaviors that can get you killed. Okay. Or put you at greater risk. So certain things you should do and certain things you should not do. Okay. Now, these are not necessarily any particular order. Okay. Number one is practice avoidance, evasion, and escape. These three practices will keep you out of most trouble in your whole life, not just when it comes to terrorist attacks. Okay. So these things will keep you out of a lot of trouble. Avoidance means don't go, like, if you don't want to get beat up by a bunch of bikers at a biker bar, don't go to a biker bar. It's going to be a little hard to get beat up by bikers at a biker bar if you're not at a biker bar. Okay. So don't go places where you think the enemy might be or you know them to be. So if you want to stay safer, at least while we're bombing Iran, maybe you should rethink taking that overseas trip. Okay. Maybe you should think twice about that. You got less protection from the United States government when you're in a foreign country. So maybe you should not travel overseas during this time. Now some people are traveling, they're going to go anyway, they're going to do what they got to do. I understand that. But if it's an optional thing, maybe you shouldn't go. Maybe you shouldn't go to any large sporting events. Maybe you should not go to that Taylor Swift concert. Maybe you should not go to that political rally and stand for Iran, stand for Israel or whatever. Maybe you should not participate in those kind of things at this time. Maybe you shouldn't go to spring break and be out there partying in your bikini, getting drunk. And then all of a sudden a bomb goes off that somebody dragged in a cooler and made a giant cooler bomb and set it right in the middle of your crowd and blew up with a bunch of nails flying out of it. Maybe you shouldn't go to spring break. Maybe you shouldn't go to certain places where you think these attacks may occur. Stay out of high risk areas. If you don't want to get mugged, maybe you should not go to bad neighborhoods. Well, if you don't want to get attacked by a bunch of terrorist sleeper cells, maybe you should be more careful about where you go. Okay. It's not going to be your fault if you're the victim of a terrorist attack, but you might not want to put yourself in a position where you get attacked. Okay. It's much safer to see it on the news than to see it while you're laying in a hospital bed fighting for your life. Okay. All right. Avoidance, evasion, and escape. Evasion is when you see it coming, you go this way. You get out of its way. Escape is when it confronts you, you leave. You leave immediately. Okay. Evasion is when you see it far enough ahead. You see something that looks suspicious, you go, you know what? Maybe we ought to leave. That doesn't look very kosher. I think we should leave, and I'm going to call the police. That's evasion. Escape is when it happens and you got to get out of there. Okay. Now, if you're trained and can legally be armed at this time, be armed. Now, I'm going to give you some cautionary things about how you should handle your firearm if you have one. There are certain things you should not do with a firearm if you are in the midst of a terrorist attack. Okay. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But if you are armed, if you are trained and it's legal for you to carry a weapon at this time, now would be a good time to do it. If you just carry it in your truck and you can carry it on your person, maybe you ought to start carrying it on your person now. Make sure you keep a couple of backup magazines. You know, maybe you should start carrying a weapon regularly if you're not used to doing that. Okay. Like I said, it has to be legal in your area and you have to be trained with it. I mean, it doesn't do you any good if you pull that out to shoot some terrorist and you kill an innocent person because you stink at shooting. Okay. That you're just helping the terrorist, or if you shoot yourself in the foot. So if you're not trained, don't pick up a gun. Okay. But if you are trained and if you are legally allowed to carry, I would suggest you do so. Avoid large crowds or politically sensitive demonstrations or protests. That's a good idea. You should avoid those areas because that's where terrorist attacks are likely to take place. Make a plan with your family. Discuss this with your wife or husband. Discuss this with your children. Okay. That if keep your kids close to you, don't let your children just wander off, especially if you go to some crowded place. I wouldn't be going to Disneyland right now. Okay. I just wouldn't be doing it. Going to Disneyland might not be a good idea. There's lots of kids there. Somebody could trust me. I don't care if they do run you through a metal detector at the front gate. Okay. I'm not ragging on Disneyland security. I've been there. Trust me, it stinks. Okay. I am ragging on it. They, like if you wanted to get something in Disneyland, you just go through the security. You have another guy on the outside fence. You go find a fenced area nearby somewhere, often in some corner where nobody can really see you, and they just throw whatever you need over the fence. And then you got your stuff. Okay, it's not difficult to get weapons inside a secured area that's not really secured. Okay, those metal detectors are there just to keep honest people honest, like locks are. Okay, if people know how to get through locks, you got to have a really, really stout lock to stop somebody that's really determined. Okay. You got to have really strong security to deter terrorists. Okay. Or maybe somebody drives through the fence, just crashes through the fence. A group of guys get out, start running through the park, killing folks. Okay. There's lots of ways they could do it. They could fly a drone over, you know, and have it explode in a crowd or on a ride or something. There's lots of ways you could come under attack at Disneyland. I'm just saying at this point in time, I probably wouldn't go to Disney World or Disneyland. Okay. Avoid large crowds or politically sensitive demonstrations or protests. Okay. Because those could really attract. That's kind of a double thing there. Make a plan with your family. Like I said, make a plan with your family. Start talking to your family about things. Tell them, okay, if this happens, this is what we do. Okay. If the cell phones go out, like say you do, maybe you spent $10,000 in going to Disneyland, you just got to go. All right. The minute you get in the gate, you go, you see that set of restrooms right over there. If your cell phone stops working, if everybody's cell phone stops working, or if you hear gunshots or an explosion or something, you run to that restroom right there. If you're doing let your teenagers kind of run around on their own, tell them if anything goes down, you go to that restroom. We'll meet you right there, and then we'll go out this exit. Okay. Make a plan with your family. You can customize it however you want, but make a plan. Without a plan, you'll go straight to panic. Okay. You'll go straight to panic. All right. Avoid mass transit or airports until the war is concluded. Now, I know you can't necessarily avoid that. Sometimes people got to travel for business. Life goes on. You just have to travel. You just have to take extra precautions when you do and be more careful. But in general, if you can drive someplace, maybe you should drive someplace, you know, instead of getting on a plane. Planes seem to be terrorist magnets. They love to hijack them. They love to fly them into buildings. They love to blow them up in the air. They just love to blow up airplanes for some reason. So I would be careful about getting on an airplane. Okay. If you have to, you have to. But if you don't have to, maybe you should avoid it. Be situationally hyper aware. Now, let me give you a prime example of somebody being situationally hyper aware, how this one person saved hundreds of lives. It was during, I want to say it was 1995 or 96. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. I know it was in the 90s when the US Olympics was in Atlanta, Georgia. And there was a man by the name of Richard Jewell. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Richard Jewell, but you need to go see it. If you haven't seen that movie, watch it. Okay, it'll teach you a good lessons about being hyper aware of your surroundings. Okay, this guy wanted to be a cop. He loved the job, but he just couldn't get through police academy. They wouldn't accept him. So he became a security guard. He was basically making like minimum wage, but he took his job seriously. And they were having this big concert at the Olympics. It was in the evening at night, and he was running off some kids who were doing some sort of vandalism thing, breaking bottles, throwing stuff, and he just ran them off, going, "Get out of here, you little brats!" And meanwhile, there was an FBI agent there, and he's sitting there watching the concert. He's not paying attention. He's not looking around, you know. And there's a bunch of cops all standing around a circle talking about what they were going to do on the weekend, fishing or whatever. They weren't paying attention, but Richard Jewell was paying attention. He was practicing situational awareness, and as he comes back into the crowded area from getting rid of those kids, he noticed a backpack that was not sitting there before, all by its lonesome, under a park bench, right next to the crowd. So he went and reported that and begged and pleaded for these guys to come over, these bomb experts to come over and take a look at this backpack. And of course, they were like, "Oh, somebody just left it. Well, whatever, blah, 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 blah." The bomb guy goes in, the EOD guy, explosive ordnance disposal guy, EOD guy goes in, opens it up, and goes, "Oh my God, that's the biggest pipe bomb I've ever seen in my life." And they started moving everybody away from it. And about the time they started getting people cleared out, it exploded. And I want to say no one was killed. Maybe one person died of a heart attack. I'm not 100% sure, but a number of people were injured, some of them seriously. But Richard Jewell saved a lot of lives that day because he was hyper aware. This is how you need to be, especially now. You need to have your head on a swivel if you're in a high risk area. I'm talking about the mall. I'm talking about sporting events. I'm talking about concerts. If you're going to do these things, if you're not going to avoid them, keep your head on a swivel. Okay. Notice things that are out of place. If something's out of place, you need to report it and avoid it. Okay. Stay away from it and report it and let the experts handle it. Okay. All right. Report suspicious packages, briefcases, backpacks that are left alone in crowded areas to authorities. Report that stuff. Okay, that's number 7 I got on my list here. Report those things and stay away from it. Don't go up there and grab the bag. What's this? It might blow up in your face. If you hear what sounds like firecrackers, take cover immediately. Okay, in a lot of people said when I heard these gunshots, I thought they sounded like firecrackers. Folks, if you're in a high risk area, especially during this time, and you hear what you think are firecrackers, it's probably not firecrackers. And if it is, you may be embarrassed that you jumped and took cover with your family. But if it's something, it's better safe than sorry. It's better to be a little bit embarrassed by a false alarm than it be real gunfire and you didn't take cover quick enough and one of your kids gets hit by a bullet. Okay. If you hear what sounds like firecrackers, it could very well be gunshots. Get to cover immediately. Okay. And I'll tell you here in a minute what you should do after that. Okay. Know the exits in any area you're in at all times. Before you go in, you should know where the exits are. You should be looking for exits. Okay. You should always know where the nearest exit is. Okay. You should do that. So if you do hear sounds like firecrackers, you can immediately go out that exit. You know, take cover. That's what you should do first. Okay. Stay abreast of the news and don't be taken by surprise. So if you're hearing of reports of a potential terrorist attack in a certain area, maybe you should avoid that. Don't go there. Okay. Or at least if you have to drive through there, be hyper vigilant. Okay. Take cover first, evaluate, and then exit the kill zone. If you hear gunfire in a potential terrorist attack or an active shooter, something like that, the first thing you do is you need to take cover. I don't mean hiding behind a bush. Okay. There's a difference between cover and concealment. Concealment hides you from view, cover hides you from gunfire, protects you from gunfire. There's lots of things out there in the public realm that can be used for cover. I've been to a lot of these, like say you're at Disneyland, these amusement parks. They've got these big concrete round trash can holders so they don't blow over or get knocked over in the wind. And they put their trash bags inside and put a lid on it. And the thing is made out of like 4 inches of concrete. So a bullet's going to have to come through two sides of that, 8 inches of concrete to get to you. That's pretty good cover. So practice looking around when you're out and about. Well, that's cover. And that's cover. That's cover over there. Get used to doing that. Okay. Looking around and checking out what could be cover, what could be used. So if something happens, you immediately go to cover. Go to cover, then evaluate. You need to understand before you can plot an exit route. Like when you look at a map and you want to figure out where you need to go, what's the first thing you got to do? You have to orient the map. You got to figure out where you are so then you can figure out where the direction you want to go, the route you want to take, and the destination you want to go to, right? You have to evaluate where you are. You have to orient the map. You need to stop, evaluate, and orient yourself to where you are and figure out where did I see that last exit? Oh, that's over here. No, that's too close to the shooter. I better choose that one over there. Then you go to a different exit. Okay. Don't just don't just run in any direction, you know. All right. Take cover first, evaluate, then exit the kill zone. Okay. It's always important to take cover first. All right. If cell service suddenly goes down across multiple phone carriers, assume an attack is imminent and leave the area immediately. This could be the precursor for a major terrorist attack because the terrorists are trying to not get you to be able to call 911. And if you can't call your relatives or your friends or your family, you're trying to get them all together. That's why I said make a plan. If the cell service goes down and you think a terrorist attack's imminent, we need to go meet at that restroom, right? The teenagers are like, well, my phone, I can't get anybody on my phone. I can't get a text through. Remember what mom and dad said, go to the restroom. So they go to that restroom, meet them up, and then you leave because they may take down the cell phone service or the 911 service prior to a terrorist attack. It's to reduce the ability, it's to give them more time to accomplish their mission because they're trying to kill as many people as possible, create as much mayhem as possible, as much chaos, as much fear. So they need as much time as they can get. It's called time on task. It's what we refer to in special operations. You got time on task. You want to you have a certain amount of time. You want to be on task doing what you're doing. Now, we would do it for good. Well, okay, we got to approach this gate. It's going to take us 30 seconds to get through the lock. Then we got 30 seconds time on task. We want to be quick, 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 right? So they're doing the same thing. They're planning a special operation. So they want time on task. They want as much time as they can, inflicting as much pain and death and destruction as they can. So if the cell phone services stop working, and I'm not just talking about yours, it could be just Verizon is out or T-Mobile is out, but at T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, they all go down in the same area at the same time. It's time to start paying attention. Something else is happening. Okay. If there's no exit you can take, make an exit. The Luby's cafeteria shooting here in Texas years ago. A guy drove his pickup through the front windows and jumped out and started shooting people with a handgun and killing folks. Some people ran to the back dining area where there was no exit. There was restrooms back there, but they couldn't get out. So people started picking up chairs and breaking out the floor to ceiling glass, plate glass windows. They broke those out and then they started escaping through the window. You need to think outside the box when this situation goes down like this. If there's not an exit, make one if you can. Okay? Make one. Break windows. Do whatever you got to do to get out. Okay? Don't be afraid about destroying property. At that point, nobody's going to care. Okay? Just knock the windows out and get out of the building as fast as you can. Okay? If there's not an exit, make an exit. All right, now here's a list of things not to do. Okay? Certain things you should not do. If an attack takes place where you are, do not follow the crowd in escaping. Okay. Do not follow the crowd. Remember the story I told you a few minutes ago about in Lebanon, there was a terrorist attack. And then when the crowd showed up, a bomb went off in an ambulance and killed a bunch more people, right? Okay. So they are anticipating perhaps a multi layered attack. So if you are in a crowd of people and gunfire erupts behind you, okay, everybody wants to run directly away from it like this, like a straight line to the exit over there. The terrorists know this. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they're hurting you in a direction, and maybe there's a bomb in the trash can right next to the door. Or maybe there's another guy in the hallway next to the exit ready to mow you down when you get into there. So don't run directly into another ambush. You're being ambushed. This is what happens when a terrorist attack occurs and you're in the area. You are being ambushed. Take cover, evaluate, exit the kill zone, but don't follow the crowd. Okay. The crowd might be doing exactly what the terrorists want, and there's another terrorist or another device or something right there that's going to get a bunch more people, and you don't want to run right into that. When you evade something, you don't necessarily run directly away from it. If someone is shooting at you, they get a better shot at you if you're running directly away from them. But if you're running sideways, it's a lot harder to hit a moving target going sideways. If it's going perpendicular to you and not parallel to you, if it's going this way or that way, it's much more difficult to hit that moving target. So if there's a shooter behind you opening up, don't run directly away from him because he might shoot you in the back. Or, like I said, if you're following the crowd, there may be other terrorists up there waiting to ambush the rest of you. Go to the left or go to the right. Make a 90-degree turn and go out sideways. Okay. Don't follow the crowd. You can't get in the crowd mentality mode. You've got to be different. You've got to think differently. Okay. You don't want to become a victim. So you have to think before you act, even if it's a split second. And these are things you need to think about before it happens. If you go into a crowded place and you're aware of where the exits are, usually it's a big area, there's multiple exits. And America's design systems like that to prevent people from getting caught up in a fire. Like if you're at the mall, there's multiple exits. You know what the best exit to use is at the mall? If you're in the mall, okay, in case you're not aware of this, everybody's going to run for the main exits they came out of. Wrong. Don't do that. Run into the nearest store and go through their back stockroom door. There's a hallway where they don't bring all their merchandise in through the front door and get in the way of customers. No, they have hallways in the backs of the malls that goes around, and there's back doors. You can exit through that hallway where they move merchandise through, and there are exits outside the building that you can openly open up from the inside. You can't open those from the outside. They're emergency exits, and you go through into one of the stores and run to the back, go through the stockroom exit into that hallway. There's not going to be a terrorist back there. 99.9% of the time, it's not going to happen. Go through there and then find an exit. Don't run down the main line of the hallway like everybody else is doing, trying to hit the big glass doors you came in over by Mervin's or whatever store you came in by, and don't go the main area where other people are going. Okay. Don't be a creature of habit. Be a creature of tactical thinking. Okay. If you're in a mall, something happens, run into the nearest store, go straight to the back, go through their stockroom door into the back stockroom, go past that. There's a door back there that leads you straight into a hallway. Take that hallway, find the nearest exit, and get out. That's the safest way. Okay. If everybody did that, everybody would just scatter into the stores, and it would be a lot harder for people to get shot or blown up or whatever they're doing. Okay. Learn to think tactically. All right. All right. There could be additional attacks ahead, or exits can become death traps. A lot of people get killed because they're all trying to go through one exit. If there's, you should never put yourself in this position, okay, where there's only like one exit. If you are in that situation, if you've done something dumb and put yourself in that position and there's an exit, don't go directly at the exit. Go around and follow the wall. Follow the wall to the exit. It's going to be harder for you to get out, but you're not going to get crushed by the crowd. Okay. So follow the wall to the exit. Everybody's going to be funneling through the exit. You want to approach it from the side, not directly this way. If you get caught up in a crowd and they start crushing you, don't put your hands up like this, like you're doing a push up. Your arms are not that strong. Okay. If you get caught up in a crowd and people get crushed because they can't breathe, you need to make sure you maintain breathing space for your chest. Cross your arms like this. Put your elbows up in front of you and use those long bones of your arms and your elbows against other people's backs. And you keep a breathing space here that's open. Okay. It's much more difficult to get crushed if they're pushing against you like this. Like this, you're going to get flattened out and get squished. Put your arms like this, cross your arms and go up against like that. And then try to wiggle your way to the side. Okay. Exit to the side of the crowd. Don't try to push forward, go sideways. Try to go sideways and don't fall down. If you fall down, you're going to get trampled. Okay. Don't fall down. All right. All right. Try to go 90 degrees away from the attacker instead of directly away. We talked about that. The reason is because it's much easier to shoot you in the back as you're running straight away. Straight on shots going to or from are much easier for people behind a gun to get you. Back and forth movement like this is much more difficult to hit. Okay. When approaching exits, follow a wall to the exit so as not to become surrounded by the crowd and crushed. That's what we talked about a second ago. Now, for if you are armed, if you are armed, okay, do not immediately draw your weapon because you think you hear gunfire or there's an explosion. Do not immediately draw your weapon. Why? Because you're in civilian clothes. People are not going to be able to tell the difference between the good guys and the bad guys. And responding officers might not be able to tell the difference. Don't draw your weapon unless your life is in imminent danger at that moment. Then you draw it, you use it, the threat's neutralized, you put it back, and then you move out of there. You keep your weapon concealed. Okay? Keep it concealed. This is another reason why I'm not a big fan of open carry. Open carry, you get in a crowded situation, somebody might go, I need a gun to defend myself, and try to take your gun. Well, now you don't know if that's a bad guy. You have no idea who this guy is. Now you're in a tussle with the gun. It's better to keep the weapon concealed so no one knows you have it. Then, if something goes down, don't immediately draw your weapon because all people see is a man with a gun. That's all they see. They have no clue who you are. And they think you're a terrorist. And you might get reported as a terrorist. And the security cameras that are up around you might go that the security people in the mall or whatever might go, that's a terrorist right there. Look at the gun. Look at the gun. And then the police are chasing you now. So it's not like the movies, folks. It's not like the movies where you're in a bad situation, you pull your gun, you start defending, and everybody knows you're the good guy. It doesn't work out like that. Good guys can get killed like that. Okay. Do not immediately draw your weapon. Keep your weapon holstered or wherever you've got it. Keep it undercover unless you absolutely need it at the moment. If your life is in imminent jeopardy, use the weapon. Once the threat is neutralized, put the weapon away and leave the area with everyone else. Okay. Trust me, you open fire on the terrorists, people are going to clear away from you too. They're gonna run from you as well. Then put the weapon away and go. Okay. And then go tell the police what you did. All right. So I can come over and shake your hand for killing a terrorist. All right. Now, do not immediately draw your weapon if you're armed. You might be mistaken for one of the attackers. Number 5, do not think that concealment is cover. Know the difference. We went over that a minute ago. A bush is concealment. A curtain is concealment. Paper mache is concealment. Glass windows are not even concealment unless it's bulletproof glass, like you're in a bank or something like that. Bullet resistant glass. I shouldn't say bulletproof. Nothing is really bulletproof. Bullet resistant glass. That is not definitely not cover. Bullet resistant glass is not concealment, but it is cover. That's one of the rare exceptions. Okay. It Cover will conceal you, but concealment will not necessarily cover you. Know the difference. Concealment hides you from view. Cover protects you from gunfire, protects you from small arms fire. It'll also protect you from shrapnel. If somebody starts shooting, there might be a bomb that goes off. Like I said, there could be more than one terrorist. This could be a multi-pronged attack. If you're behind cover already and a bomb goes off, you're much better off behind that cover. So maybe you don't get sprayed with shrapnel. Okay. If there's an attack at your child's school, do not go rushing up to the school immediately. Okay, I know this is natural for all parents to do. Oh my gosh, I heard on the news that there was an attack, a terrorist attack at my daughter's school. I got to go up there right now. You do? And if your daughter survives, she might be an orphan. Okay, because I read a book, and this was one of the things that was suggested for me to read when I was working in counterterrorism, is a book about Beslan. There's a book out called Beslan. If you want to read a horrible book that'll give you nightmares, read that book. Okay. I read that book. It was just awful. It was terrible what happened. Basically, these Chechen terrorists took over a school in Beslan, Russia, and they rigged up bombs around the school and to booby trap the school. So Spetsnaz they didn't want Spetsnaz coming in. Spetsnaz eventually did come in by blowing mouse holes through the wall. What that is, it's like at the base of a wall where you got the floor here in the base of the wall. They blow a small hole they can crawl through. It's called a mouse hole. You use a special shape charge for that and blow a hole through the wall. Then you go rushing through it with guns blazing and you start killing terrorists. It's all real exciting. But anyway, so they they basically set car bombs outside. So the first parents that arrived got blown up by car bombs. Okay, so then they had to back everybody up like a block or two away and search all the vehicles on the streets for explosives before anybody could even approach the building. This bought the attackers time to reinforce the school and fortify their positions. And it turned into a big standoff, and ended up being a whole bunch of kids got killed in that, and the terrorists all got killed. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. It's horrible. But anyway, they should make a movie about that, but you'd have to have a strong stomach to watch it. In any case, do not just go rushing up to the school. It could be a bait and switch. They're going to get you up there, they're baiting you into the trap, and then boom, they're going to kill you as a parent. And then you're never going to see your kid again. Okay, so do not go rushing up there. Do not do that. Okay, let the professionals handle it. Okay. Now I know Uvalde was a terrible thing, and they don't think the law enforcement didn't handle it right. And I agree. I agree. It was terrible. Some parents had to go in and get their kids out themselves. It was awful. But that is the rare exception. Most police departments are very professionally trained. The military is certainly professionally trained. Let the experts handle it, okay? Don't go rushing up to the school thinking you're going to get your kid once terrorist attack's already taken place. They're not going to let you into the school anyway. So don't do it. It's dangerous for you. All right. Do not stop and video with your phone. Okay, I had to add this one in there for this generation because people are just want to record everything with their phone. They think, oh my gosh, look, a terrorist attack. People are getting blown limb from limb right in front of me. Won't that make a viral video? And they're videotaping you're liable to catch a bullet right through your phone into your face. Don't stop and videotape with your phone. In public areas where most terrorist attacks are going to take place, trust me, there's going to be a lot of footage available. There's security cameras everywhere. There's going to be video of it. You don't need to go viral. This is not a viral moment for you. You want to make sure this is a survival moment for you. Okay. You want to survive this. You don't want to videotape it and go, oh, look, I think I'll get some clicks and likes out of this video. My Facebook page is going to blow up. And the next thing you know, you blow up. Dumb, dumb, dumb. Don't do stupid stuff. Okay? Like trying to record a terrorist attack in progress while you're supposed to be getting out of there. Just get out of there. Okay? You can go make a video in a safe area going, this is what happened to me. And and maybe people will watch that. Make sure you get out. Okay? Make sure you get out. And last but not least, do not panic. If you have a plan, you know, you don't have to panic. You won't panic if you have a plan. And I would suggest that you even rehearse this. Like for instance, let's say you got kids, okay? And you want to do a drill with your kids, okay? Maybe you give them a code word that you text them, which means meet us at the safe space right now. If I ever text you the word hurricane, okay? We live inland. We never get hit by hurricanes. But if I text you the word hurricane, you better stop what you're doing and get your butt to the pre-designated meeting spot. Then you go to the pre-designated meeting spot the next time you go out to the mall or whatever it is you're doing, and you text all your kids, hurricane, hurricane, hurricane. And then you sit and wait and time them. How long did it take for you to get here? Were you not paying attention to your text messages? Practice it. Practice your plan. Have a plan and find some way to practice it so that everybody's familiar with the drill if something goes down. So everybody knows what to do. You can even have a backup. If you go to that restroom area over there and it doesn't look safe, go to the music store, or go to the bank across the street. Okay? So come up with a plan and maybe a backup and implement them and practice those things. Have a little drill, it's and your kids will understand that you're doing it for their own safety because you love them and you want them to stay safe. Okay? And I want you guys to all stay safe. Okay, I don't want to see anybody get killed by a bunch of stinking terrorists and sleeper cells and all that kind of nonsense. These people specifically target civilians. Of course, terrorists by nature are civilians themselves. They're not an organized military, but they target civilians. They want to cause as much mayhem, as much trouble, as much chaos, as much death and destruction as they possibly can. Folks, this is demonic. Now, of course, your ultimate insurance against all of this is salvation in Jesus Christ. So if you do get killed in a terrorist attack, hey, at least you go to heaven, you don't go to hell, right? You need to be saved in Jesus Christ. That is your ultimate life. And that is the only real life insurance policy there is. If I've got life insurance on me and I die, my wife gets paid. But if I've got Jesus Christ in my heart and I die, I get the benefit because I go to heaven. Okay. Better than any money, better than any money that you can have. Okay. So make sure you're saved in Jesus Christ, just as a very last resort. Well, actually, it should be your first resort. You should get saved. That's above and beyond all things. But if replay this video and go back and take notes on the different points that I make and write these things down. And if you need to, maybe you can go get a book on it or something. I'm probably not telling you anything super new. I'm probably telling you things that other people have taught because they're just common sense things. But I want you to stay safe, and I'd like to be your neighbor in heaven. So if you're not serving Jesus Christ, please do. Repent of your sins, give your life to Christ, be born again, so we can be neighbors in heaven. Anyway, God bless you all. You have a good night. Stay safe. God bless you.